Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the No Laying Up podcast. Solly here with my guy, Mr. Kevin Van Valkenburg, KVV. What do we have on tap for the people today?
Solly, we have another episode of Golf Feuds. We were kicking around like what would be the right subject to tackle with this next sort of one. We had a lot of fun with Brookline. Even the people in GB and I loved it. They were very happy to sort of have us recount some of their issues with the American rudeness. We read a great column, but as we were kind of working our way through feuds, we kicked around a couple like, oh, Tiger had some feuds here and there, but there was really one guy who rose above it all, who was the king of feuds, who didn't just have like feuds. He had kind of like novels versus the feuds with people. I mean, this dude feuded with everyone, and that is Severino Ballesteros.
The great Sevy. We were we were going to split it up. You were going to do some Sevy feuds, and I was going to do some Tiger things. We were just like, what if we just divided up the genre of feuds that Sevy had between the two of us? Mine are going to be a little bit more on the personal golfer side. You were tackling a little bit of the bigger picture stuff with his feuds with the tours on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. I think it might have been a shorter pod if we just did a pod on people he did not feud with.
Yeah, I think so.
And some the man lived for it. Listen, there are many, many, many tales out there of his excellence, his many accomplishments, 5-time major champion, a reverence that people have for this guy that watched him play that is unmistakable. The charisma, all of that. We're not denying any of that. We're not here to drag the man down.
No.
We're simply here to acknowledge the many, 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 many times he butted heads with the rules officials, governing bodies, players, caddies, the like throughout his career. And there's some really funny ones. I'm prepared to laugh with you today.
Yeah. And fair warning, I'm probably going to do a little bit of Sevy voice. And you might do some too, Solid. I think it's kind of part of it. If that is not for you, if you are offended by such things, then you know what? You might just skip this one because like the Sevy stories are better when the Sevy voice creeps in. Now, am I going to commit fully to it? Sometimes I might trail off. It's kind of like Ernie Els where it's like, oh, no, pull up. No. Okay. But we're going to do our best because I think the man truly does. He had a panache. I think, Sevy wasn't our era, but reading about him and like doing these history lessons are really a fun way to educate ourselves about a golf era that I think, imagine how much fun we would have had if this was happening in like the podcasting era.
Oh my gosh. Well, because there's some really fun ones in this. Like there's some really lighthearted kind of jabs and feuds and all that. There's a couple that are like, oh, buddy, I don't know about that one. That one, yeah, there's a different word for that one, which I think we'll get to at least one of those. But I literally ran out of time preparing for this. I had plenty of time, but just kept Googling, kept trying different words, different variations of the word feud, controversy, dispute, argument, and kept finding new things with stuff. And I promise you we could do a volume 2 of these just from what we've probably left on the table. I think the next volume would need to include just interviewing other people for their individual stories that never made it into print or any of that, because the man was a legend in a lot of ways. And he sought this stuff out. He pursued confrontation. There's no denying that. And I think if you're denying that at this point, I hope by the end of this podcast, you will agree with that.
So I think before we get into the feuds, I want to start just to give a little bit of Sevy context, particularly like if you're not familiar with him.
Before we even do that, we're outdoor sport. We're going to be a lot of outdoor things that are happening. It's summertime. Man needs more sun. And this is your formal invitation. Consider this your formal invitation to spend less time behind your screens and more time outside with friends in the sun in the evenings. Go for walks. Why? It's great for your physical and mental health. It makes you happier. It can happen on the golf course. Absolutely. And at Oars and Alps, they are making sunscreen for men. Specifically, you can count on them for hardworking formulas that are good for your skin. None of that tropical scent stuff. You don't smell like a pina colada. It's lightweight. It's non-greasy. It's non-sticky. Doesn't leave a white cast or a chalky residue. Easy to use, travel friendly, great for reapplying on the go. It's got great hands-free formats. They got sprays, mist, sticks, so your hands stay clean. They got all kinds of different sizes, SPF 30, SPF 50, SPF 70, the travel size, SPF 50 as well. Get outside and get you some sunshine. It is free, and with Oars and Alps, you can stay out as long as you want. Code NLU 15 gets you 15% off Oars and Alps sun care and skin care today. I keep one bottle in my golf bag and I keep one in the back of our stroller for our evening walks, just a quick dab, and then I know I'm protected from the sun. Men need to be wearing more sunscreen. It's not something to mess around with. You need to be outdoors and you need to protect yourself from the sun. Those two things go hand in hand. Code NLU15 gets you 15% off oarsandalps.com. You can also check them out on Amazon as well. All right. Just give us some background.
Just completely slathered my daughter up with Oars and Alps just as I dropped her off at the pool a few minutes ago. But as we're speaking of sun, I want to just give a little context to where Sevy was from, because if you don't know this, I think it helps kind of explain some of what made Sevy driven and also just feel like he worked so hard to get what he got that no one was going to take it away from him. If you're not familiar with Severino Ballesteros, he was born in 1957 in Padrena, a small city on the north coast of Spain. Father was a dairy farmer, so Sevy grew up like with cows and livestock all around him. He wasn't like Trevino poor, but he certainly like didn't come from much. He lived 100 yards from the Padrena Golf Club, and his uncle Ramon, who actually caddied there as a young man, went on to become a great player who won the Spanish Open, as well as the Opens in Italy and Brazil and Holland and France. So golf was kind of in their family, in their blood. In fact, all three of Sevy's older brothers, Baldomero Jr., Manuel, and Vicente, all were professional golfers. None had like a ton of success, but I believe Manuel won a tournament at some point in the European Tour. So, that was kind of the setting the stage a little bit. But Sevy kind of gave an interview to Golf Digest, which is a good source of a lot of this information here. Talking about Padrena, said, "There was one bar, one television in the bar, one telephone, one shop, no cars. Seeing a car back then was like looking up at the sky and seeing the Concorde today. A lot of the villagers would work on the fishing ships. They would be gone for months, sending home money every week, and then they would be home for Christmas and they would be gone again. There were really only three sources of income in Padrena: fishing, caddying, and farming." So there's a famous story that's kind of like part of the Sevy lore that is about someone at the Padrena Golf Club gave Sevy a 3-iron as a kid. Sevy kind of later said it was a 5-iron, so it's a little bit of in dispute. But this is kind of how Sevy learned to be such a creative sort of mind. It wasn't even an actual full iron. It was just an iron head. A lot of this information comes from Alistair Tate's biography of Sevy. And Sevy he took this head and he would go into the woods and he would find pieces of wood that he would whittle down the tip of, and he would jam them into the iron head and then leave it in a bucket of water at night so that the wood would expand and sort of fit into the hosel. And that was what he practiced with, a 5-iron that he just would take out to the beach. He would find rocks on the beach that were the size of golf balls. He would sort of fill his pockets with these rocks and he would hide them so that other kids couldn't sort of use them. And then he would just hit these rocks with this old 5-iron like over and over and over. Every time the shaft would break, he'd have to go hunting for another one. Eventually he got to do some caddying at the Padrena Golf Club. He didn't, he told stories about years later. He felt a little bit bad about this, but because he didn't have any money for golf balls, he would sometimes, when he was caddying, his player would hit the ball into the weeds. He'd go into the weeds. He'd see the ball there. And he'd say, "I cannot find it. I do not know where it is." Obviously, he'd say it's in Spanish. And then he'd go back at night and grab those balls and add them to his personal collection, which he felt a little bit of guilt about. So he played a lot of golf. He played a lot of golf on the beach, but not really formal golf. He finally let him enter the caddy competition when I think he was 16. He ended up winning it. But no one really was sure if this was like a serious job in his life. So in 1973, he was offered a job at a local factory making boats. He said, "This was a crucial moment in my life. My mother was in favor of me taking the job. I thought I needed a future, but my father was against. He said I must start playing golf for a living because I was that good." So Sevy never played any junior golf. He basically like joined the European Tour as
a little Scottish there for a second.
No, sorry, I think that he basically started playing the European Tour as like an 18-year-old, and he just kind of went off into this unknown sort of world, and sort of literally like playing with real clubs for the first time. And when he was 19, he finished second at Royal Birkdale, sort of famous. He was leading going into the final day of Royal Birkdale, remarkably, and he was so kind of like laissez-faire about it that he went out to dancing at a discotheque like until midnight the night before, and it just was like an absolute. He didn't play that great on the final day. He shot 74 to Johnny Miller shooting 66, but he finished tied second with Jack Nicklaus at age 19. And this was kind of like his introduction into the world.
Wow. Wow. I mean, yeah, I think there's future Sevy deep dives in the cards as well of just like all the there's a Sevy stories pod on top of the Sevy feuds part 2, which I think will also exist. But I'm going to kick things off just a little bit. You're going to get into some of the European Tour feuds, but we have some audio from a 2021 podcast I did. It was a deep dive in the 1991 Ryder Cup, just getting some stories from a bunch of guys, including Lanny Watkins, Dave Stockton, who's the captain of that team, Paul Azinger, and Hale Irwin is in this audio clip. And then we have some stories of the first beef that I'll cover, which is Paul Azinger and Sevy, which is a somewhat famous story. But I'm calling this one the many players versus Sevy section of it. And you'll hear a little narration in there. Again, this was a deep dive in the 1991 podcast. But just some guys telling some Sevy stories and just kind of set the scene a little bit for how often he butted heads specifically with the American players.
It's just, but then again, they had Sevy involved. And with Sevy, there was always an issue. The instigator, the antagonizer, he was everything. He had to be in the middle of everybody's business. What the things he did would probably tick us off so much that, we would get more upset at what was happening. And you get more defensive on stuff. So there's no question, I think he was, if there had to be an antagonist going back in all the Ryder Cups and when everything started, I think the arrow points, directly at Sevy and no one else.
What Lanny said is correct. It was one of those things. I mean, different people do different things. And Ballesteros was stuff to play with.
He could get under your skin with little things he might say, something he might do on the golf course. He might challenge a situation as far as rules go. Just didn't quite know what you're going to get from Sevy. I think everybody in our team room would, if you had to, as you suggest or asked, which one would it be? It probably would have been Sevy.
Hale Irwin himself had previous run-ins with Sevy.
I had something with Sevy many years ago. We were playing in the World Match Play in Wentworth, and he was quite a young player just starting out in Europe, was the new future of Europe. This was the year that Europe was experimenting with tapping down spike marks, which were defined as an uplifted tuft of grass. Well, these are 36-hole matches, and we're the first match out, so there really are no spike marks. But Sevy's tapping all over the place, and I'm really kind of wondering what this is all about. And so on the 18th hole, he had his hand behind the ball in the rough, and the referee looked at me and he said, "You can call that on him if you want to." I said, "No, I want to beat him badly, of course. I want to know what a spike mark is." And he said, "I thought so." So we went in and at the 18-hole break and got a Spanish interpreter. Okay, here it is. Laid it all out, and we get to 16th hole. And Sevy's got a putt from perhaps 15 feet for a birdie and a win on the hole, and I'm 2 up at the time. And he points to spike mark. Well, I looked at it, I said, "I don't know." Asked the referee. The referee said, "No." He missed the putt and went to the 17th tee and hit it out of bounds, and I won that hole as well. So technically I won 3-1. But at the press conference, he indicated to the press that I had gotten favorable treatment from the referee, which was a total joke. That was not the case. And then when asked about my 2-1 victory, I was pretty pin up with a little emotion at the time. I said, "Dude, when I won the 17th hole, that's 3-1, and you can print it." So those are the kind of things that we as players ran into. They weren't necessarily directed at us personally. That's just the way Sevy was.
And another from Lanny Watkins.
The second day at the Belfry in the morning, Marco Marinau playing Sevy, and I think Manuel Pinero going down the first hole, best ball. We get on the green, and I've got about a 20, 25 footer for birdie. Sevy's about 12 feet. His coin's in my line. I had him move it. I pulled my putt. It hit his coin. It bounced right, went in the hole. He was livid. You had me do that on purpose. You had me move my coin so you could make that putt. I said, "Yes." I got right in his face. I said, "Yes, Sevy, I'm that blanking good. Don't forget it."
And yet another one from Lanny.
Tom Lehman was going off first against him, and Curtis Strange and I both got Lehman, and we told him, he said, he is going to pull something. Go right back at him. Don't let him get the upper hand.
So that was Lanny, then Dave Stockton, then Hale Irwin was telling the 3-1 story, then obviously Lanny to wrap that up. But that just sets the scene a little bit. If you just get these guys wound up telling Sevy stories, they will go.
Yeah. So back in 1978, Sevy the first time he ever came to America was to play the Greater Greensboro Open. And his plane actually had to turn around to go back to Spain because there was some sort of medical emergency. It was the first time he'd ever been on a plane. And he called his brother when he got home, and he's like, I was not meant to do this. I'm not supposed to go to America. And his brother said, no, you got to go. This is where great golf is being played. And he flew over, played in the Greater Greensboro Open, and won. Like the first time, he's the first guy who's ever like one of the first big guys ever debut on the PGA Tour and win straight up. So Sevy was already getting very popular at this point in Europe. And Dean Beeman, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, offered him a chance to join the PGA Tour full time without having to go through qualifying school. Yeah. And in 1978, this was a big deal because like this was not, spots were not given to guys easily. The American players did not love it. This was imagine some of the beginning of the animus that they had for Sevy. But Sevy actually turned it down. He said, I want to be free to play in Europe this year. I owe the people of Europe so much. But again, like not only did Sevy love to compete, but he also liked his money, as someone who didn't grow up with a lot, and he wanted to sort of, use opportunities to compile various money. So the first ever really pissing match that I found evidence of that he got in was with his own countryman, Angel Gallardo, who was 12 years his senior. They were playing in the Hennessy Cognac Cup, which was a match between continental Europe and the British and Irish players. And Sevy got his ass kicked in the opening match. He lost 7-6. And so he asked to sit the next day, claiming suddenly that he had the flu. Gallardo claimed that he was saving himself for the lucrative World Series of Golf the following week. Gallardo said, I told him to stop thinking about the money and his trip the following week and start thinking about his teammates. The two countrymen barely spoke the rest of the trip. And what kind of the start of that was that if you didn't, Sevy knew what he was a draw, that he knew that he was that he went to a tournament that it was going to be very popular. A lot of more people were going to come. And he was basically like, hey, like, I want my money up front. And so he straight up told tournament organizers, like, I want more money. And so he said, one year when sort of asked to play in the sort of the World Cup of golf, he did it 3 times before basically telling his own federation to fuck off. He said, I am not prepared to travel 25,000 miles to play for 4 days under the pressure for nothing. All you get is $1,000. I am a professional. My job is to make money. I am not an amateur. I have won twice. Now I give the chance to somebody else. The Spanish football team gets 15,000 a man when they play in the World Cup, and they finish dead last. The Spanish Federation never asks me what they want. They tell me, you are playing in the World Cup. Yet when I am doing well in the Open Championship, I never get a telegram from them. I got a gold medal for being a world champion, but I work hard for it. So this was basically Sevy, he ended up getting a lot of appearance money on the sort of, and as he started, he ended up winning an Open Championship. He won the Masters at age 23. And he was pissed at his own country for basically not understanding and caring how good he was. He bitched that he did not get a telegram from King Juan Carlos of Spain when he won the Masters. He was happy that the church bells of Pedrena rang all through the night to celebrate Sevy, which I got to say, if you're like a Pedrena fisherman and you're trying to get up at 3 a.m. and the fucking church bells keep ringing to celebrate this dude you don't know anything about. Spanish newspapers barely mentioned the fact that Sevy won the Masters. And he was all too aware of it. He said, the newspapers will say that Ballesteros won the Masters, and that will be about it. Television will not get around to showing highlights for months and months, and on the second national channel. So long before Sevy started fighting with the PGA Tour, he started fighting with the European Tour, all over these appearance fees. So the rules back then were different. Basically that only certain players could get appearance fees. The guys who had won a major championship or guys who were sort of leading the order of merit. And they could essentially negotiate whatever they wanted. And this was known as the Tony Jacklin rule, because Tony Jacklin for a long time was the only major winner in Europe from 1951 to 1967 or 69. And at one point, Sevy managed to negotiate. He was all in on this. He thought, man, this is a great way to make money. He was getting around $25,000 just to show up at a tournament, plus first class travel. And this was back when the purse for the entire European tour was $2 million for the year. So about finishing third at the US Open would get you the entire purse for the year. So as this kind of grew, and as some people kind of grew resentment towards Sevy for getting all this money, the European Tour decided it was sort of unsavory. They didn't believe that you should begin the year with the tournament with money in your pocket. And so they voted to ban appearance fees, but only for Europeans. they would still pay out
that's right.
appearance fees to Americans who would come over. So Trevino and Johnny Miller and Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus could still get them. Well, Sevy was obviously furious about this. And he'd said, fuck you, I'm going to still ask for appearance fees. I'm going to negotiate it. And then when the tour told him he could not accept them, he said, I will resign from the tour if this policy is put in place. He said, I feel sorry for the people who want to see me play. I hope they will understand my position. The rule banning appearance fees is aimed only at me. I don't know why the players make the rule. Maybe they are jealous. If the sponsors want the best players who will give them the best publicity, they must pay. Ken Schofield, who is the European Tour's executive director, basically sent a letter to Sevy that stated his intentions that under no circumstances would he be getting appearance fees. He said, one thing that you should know straight from me is that no player can, from this day forward, expect a clear $250,000 in appearance fees before teeing off on the European Tour, because that is apparently what Sevy made the one year. And he said, how can it be right for a sponsor to pay big money to get American players like Tom Weiskopf, Johnny Miller, and Lee Trevino, but for wrong for them to pay me? I am not in the same category after I win the Open and the Masters? I think Sevy had a good point there.
Oh, excellent point.
Do you know how much I give to golf? So before the Masters in 1981, he sat down for a documentary where he basically said, this kind of made me laugh thinking about some of the recent language. He said, the golf owes me something, but I don't owe anything to golf. I've worked very hard to get where I want. So this guy, Martini, was a company that sort of sponsored the Martini International at Wentworth. And he was putting up about 66,000 pounds a year. And he felt that the prize money should be enough to get Sevy to play, especially since he was the defending champion. He says, I suppose it's a case of supply and demand, but it's like holding golf to ransom. And I don't like that. This guy, Dave Rutherford of the company Martini. I would have hoped that he would have played without being paid, especially as he won our event last year. In his victory speech, he promised to defend his title. He was disinclined to pay Sevy any sort of appearance fees. He said, it's a pity, really, that golf is being crippled by money demands. This is in 1981, sorry. Another company, Corrals, had sort of sponsored the Corrals Classic in Royal Porthcawl. They refused to consider paying appearance fees. He said, we will never pay appearance money. Chairman Ken Tucker said, it is our official company policy. We refuse to do it when some players ask for it in our snooker tournament. Unless it's stamped out, I can see a lot of sponsors dropping out of golf. It's a sport which is already very expensive to back anyway. So the tour votes to uphold the rule and basically saying, we're sorry that Sevy is going to resign his membership. Although they didn't suspend him or anything. Sevy refuses to play any Euro tournaments that whole summer, while kind of like saying, they're lying about me. Most of the stories about me are untrue. I never said no pay, no play. I said, leave it up to the sponsor to decide. Maybe I play, maybe I don't. It hurts me very much when they make a rule that discriminates between me and American players. So Tony Jacklin, interesting enough, was the first person to get appearance money to play in Europe in the 70s. That came after he won the Open in 79. In fact, he was the best player for a couple of years. He said, I was the best player in Europe. I was carrying the tour on my shoulders, all in the hospitality, the promotion of the European Tour. My manager took advantage of that. Not really advantage, but made the decision to ask for appearance money. Looking back now, it was only fair. The tour was nothing, and I could have gone to the U.S. very easily. The money was 5 times that. Not only that, but I could have had a better chance to develop my game. But I stayed in Europe because I liked it. So essentially, this came to a boil in the sort of build-up to the Ryder Cup. And the press was not really on Sevy's side. Back then, this sort of Howard Clark, journalist, once famously summed up Sevy's stance on appearance fees and said, the only place that Seve Ballesteros turns up for nothing is at his mom's breakfast. So Sevy decides he's kind of come back to the tour because Slazenger, his main sponsor, basically told him, hey, you better start playing or you're going to be in violation of our contract, which was one of his most lucrative. And he wanted to play on the Ryder Cup team. So Ken Schofield, the executive director, said, fine, you know what? The matter's closed. You keep playing and we'll just figure it out. But he didn't have enough points to make it onto the team and on points. So everyone assumed that he would be one of Mark Jacobs' 2 picks, captain. Nope. The picks came out, and on the team was Bernard Langer, Nick Faldo, Sandy Lyle, Jose Maria Canizares, Sam Torrance, Miguel Pinheiro, Eamon Darcy, Des Smith, Howard Clark, and Bernard Gallagher. And the 2 extra picks that Jacobs, were Mark James and Peter Oosterhuis. Peter Oosterhuis, by the way, wasn't even a member of the European Tour, but they still picked him over Sevy. Jacobs claims he wanted Sevy on the team, but he decided to put it to a vote between himself, Neil Coles, the chairman of the tournament committee, and Bernard Langer, who was the Order of Merit winner. Allegedly, Coles and Langer voted no, and Langer said he did it because it's what the players on the team wanted. They didn't want Sevy. Sevy says, afterwards, I spoke to Langer, and he said it was what others who did it. They did not want me, that he did. When I spoke to John Jacobs, he said it was the others. Nobody made the decision, apparently. So Sevy doesn't play in that Ryder Cup, and guess what? The United States wins by 9 friggin' points, which leads to a great change to come.
Whew. All right, flying start. I think I've actually got a little sweat going already. Just hearing the feeling Sevy get all animated has got me a little a little fired up here. Listen, the future, coming off that 9-point win at the Ryder Cup here 2025, we can say the future of American golf is now. Launched in 2023, the U.S. National Development Program is the United States' first unified pathway designed to guide top junior players all the way to the highest levels of the sport. From competitive junior golf to amateur and eventually professional play, the USGA is helping chart that journey. The program identifies, trains, develops, funds, and supports the nation's most promising young talent, regardless of their cultural, geographical, or financial background. It's all part of the USGA's commitment to keeping American golf at the forefront of the global game. With national and junior teams for boys and girls, an elite amateur team, and 17 state junior teams now in place, plus a national young professional team on the way, the impact is already being felt. And in 2025 alone, the USGA awarded over 100 grants to junior golfers in need, helping cover the cost of coaching, travel, tournaments, and more. Talent is everywhere, and opportunity should be to learn more at usga.org/USNDP. That's usga.org/USNDP. Cool developments going on there. It's going to be something we're going to need to follow. So, all right, I'm going to take over for a little bit and introduce, I don't know, is this the most famous feud he's ever had with another player? The Paul Azinger feud? Is that fair? Is it only famous because I'm a Ryder Cup obsessed? I don't know if that's a fair one, but it's a lot of people remember this one from the 1991 Ryder Cup. Again, we have some audio on this, but first, this is again from Paul Azinger's recounting of the story. But first, he introduces how the beef between Azinger and Sevy went back a little bit, even from 1991. So before we get to that, here's Azinger telling the story.
Well, see, I draw Sevy on Saturday night, and Curtis walks up to me and says, "Don't let him pull anything on you tomorrow." So my mindset shifts. So then we get to the first tee, and Curtis goes off last, and I'm off first. So there's a big gap between those tee times, and he comes walking up to me on the first tee. "Hey, how you feeling?" "Good." "Don't let him pull anything on you today." So back then, the golf balls were getting shredded by the square grooves, and we were both using square groove wedges. We hit irons off the second tee, 3 irons, both of us, wedge into the green. He hit it about 12 feet. I hit it about 4 feet. We get up there, and he takes his ball and tosses it to his caddy, Ian, and says, "I take this ball out of play." I was like, Curtis popped in my head.
That's so good.
My ball was shredded. I had hair. I used a ping wedge back then, and it really wrecked the golf balls. You could pick my golf ball up by the paint thread that was hanging from it. I can't take it out of play, though. I could rub that paint thing off of there, but I can't take the ball out. So anyway, I just thought he was pulling something right there. And so I looked at his caddy. I said, "I need to see that ball." And I looked at it, and I walked over to Sevy. And he was already lining up. He just squatted down, and he just looked up at me like that. And I said, "I don't think he can take this ball out." I said, "Look at mine. It looks just as bad." He goes, "The European rule says this ball is no good." I said, "Well, in the U.S., you're going to have to play it." I said, "Maybe we should ask the official." So Andy McPhee came in. He says, "I'm sorry, Sevy, you have to play this ball." Well, the crowd was into it now, and they were jeering me. Sevy lined that putt up from every direction. I looked at Sevy, and I said, "I'm sorry, my ball looks just as bad." And Sevy looked at me, and he said, No, it's okay. If this is the way you want to play today, we can play this way." And I swear, bro, my hands do not shake when I play, but at that moment, I was starting to quiver. He made the 12-footer.
Of course he did.
And then as the crowd noise died down, some British guy yelled out, "What would you have done with a good ball, Sevy?" And I was thinking, man. I put my ball down. I was like this. I hit this putt that went in the hole and came right back at me, and the crowd just yelled out. They cheered twice as loud when mine missed. And it was really a rough match after that. We went at it.
So good. Just the Zinger recounting of that whole story, the accents is so good. And that match ends on 18 with with Sevy accusing Azinger of taking a bad drop. There's water all down the left. Azinger hooks it left, and they were off by like 70 yards. And they end up kind of going with a median answer on that. And Sevy said that he got favorable treatment from the rules official in that circumstance as well. So all that is built up from 89, and we go into 1991, which Chip Beck and Paul Azinger, first match out of the Ryder Cup, are playing Jose Maria Olazabal and Sevy. And here is Azinger telling the story of what happens then.
Then on 10T, they accuse us of using the wrong compression ball, which we did. And it was totally my fault. But it was a 90 compression Titleist versus a 100 compression Titleist, and we were on the first par 5. Here's how it works. If the 100 compression Titleist goes off number 1, the 100 compression Titleist has to go first off every odd hole the rest of the day. That 90 compression ball, which was red, if it goes off number 2, it goes off every even hole the rest of the day.
It was the par 5 7th hole where Azinger and Beck violated this rule.
If you hit my ball off the tee, you lay up, I get to hit my ball into the green. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. And they caught that, and that's illegal. But they didn't call it. It was on 7. 8, we played normal. 9, we played normal. So they tried to call us on it, I guess, on 10T. And we were 2 up or 3 up or something. It shook us up. It was ugly.
I always wondered how they could tell. How would they even know? I guess it was the color of the ball was different.
No, just the logo. Just the Titleist stamp and the number on the ball.
How did they notice that?
Black or red. They heard us talking about it.
Oh, okay.
I was free and talk. We were talking about it like it was a great strat. Boy, aren't we smart?
Right.
So that's what kicks off the incident. They have a big showdown on the 10th hole. And so what happened there was Bernard Gallagher, who was the captain of the European team, found out during that opening session that his radio was on an open channel. And so it was open. Anybody could have been listening on any of their conversations. So they cut off communications. And so when Sevy and Jose Maria wanted to bring this up, get a captain involved immediately on 7, they couldn't get a hold of Gallagher. So Gallagher doesn't meet him up until the 10th hole.
Okay. That's
when the showdown happens. And Azinger kind of gets this. The first time I ever hear the word cheat is from Azinger. He's like, well, we're not trying to cheat. And Sevy's like, no, nobody's saying you're trying to cheat. But they were trying to say that they violated on 7, 8, and 9. And the Americans claim they only violated it on 7. But they also said that it was so a month later, Sevy said Azinger didn't cheat, but he lied. He said the ball change only happened once, but we know it happened 3 times. At first, he denied it completely. Then when he realized they could not lose the hole, he changed his statement. He was the only one of the American team that did not behave in a proper manner. The American team were 11 nice guys and Paul Azinger.
Ooh.
Sevy also said he has not won a major championship, and he was trying to be a hero for his team. When we had the dispute over the change of balls, he lied. Azinger said at the end of this day, I believe he said about Sevy's coughing. He did it on every single hole. When Olazabal get ready, he never did it. It really bothered Chip. If I play with him tomorrow, I won't put up with that. Sevy said, I'm surprised Paul said that. I have the flu. I've been taking antibiotics, coughing all day. In this game, in any game, when you lose, you have to take it and say, congratulations. I'm surprised he said that. It's not fair. Then a month after that Ryder Cup, Zinger said, the press is trying to have a field day with this thing, and I'm not going to play into their hands. I don't want there to be a running feud between Sevy and I. I don't feel there is. This is something being created by the press. Sevy then said, he lied. They did it 3 times. He lied and said it only happened once. And again, he referred back to the 89 Ryder Cup and said he knows he took the wrong drop, and he knows that I know. So these two did not like each other. And then Billy Foster retells a great story about as soon as, all right, okay, we'll play on. There's no penalty here. And then as soon as that happened, okay, play on. The Zinger takes a step back and walks right past Billy Foster, who was caddying for Sevy, and said, nice try. And Foster's like, oh, okay. And as soon as he's walking down the fairway, he tells Sevy about it. He said the blood just rushed into his eyes. He was fuming, just absolutely fuming that Azinger said nice try after all that. But That's one of my favorite all-time Sevy feuds. I've listened to back to that story maybe 15 times because Zinger's so good at telling it.
So I think Sevy had a cough that lasted like 20 years.
Oh my God, it's everywhere.
He almost so many, and he would always be like, "I have allergies. What do you expect?" Like he just constantly was coughing in people's backswings.
Okay, this is a good time for this one because I've got some really small minor ones, but I'm just going to do this one now. The fruitcake incident.
Okay.
So back in the final of the 1991 World Match Play, it is Sevy versus Nick Price, and they're on the 13th hole. And first of all, there's a Golfing World video about this. I'm going to play a little tiny clip from it here shortly, but you should go back and watch because this is like an extremely romantic setting for golf. Just like a match play, tons of people out there. You know, I think it's I don't know if it's at Wentworth, but it's just like a really vibey scene out there and a really romantic time in European Tour golf. Put that aside. But so 13th hole, Billy Foster's on the bag for Sevy, and he asks Billy for something to eat out of the bag. And they have a banana in the bag and a fruitcake. And Sevy says, I want the banana. But Sevy liked his bananas super ripe, almost to the point where like others would throw them out. They needed to be black, but the banana was yellow, even had a little like hint of green on it. You know, made a crack when he opened it. And Sevy gets furious. He gets mad. And Billy's like, I'll give you one job. You cannot do this job. And he asked for the fruitcake, and Foster chucks the banana into the forest and says, I'm a caddy, not a grain grocer. So Sevy goes and eats the fruitcake, and just as Price gets to the top of his backswing, the fruitcake goes down the wrong pipe, and it is right in Price's backswing. You just hear this. And Price chunks the shot into the front left bunker. And Sevy like comes over and is apologizing profusely for, you know, it was an error. I really did choke this time on a fruitcake. And he asks the ref if he can he replay the stroke? And he like keeps trying to negotiate with the ref to let Nick Price play this stroke. You got to go back and watch this part. It's 2:28-minute mark of the Golfing World video called Seve Ballesteros and the Fruitcake Incident. And Sevy just, the ref rules no. And Sevy just makes this face that I need you to see that just made me laugh so hard. Just gives this little shrug. Like, hey, you know, I tried to let him replay it.
Hey, guy, I try.
Again, it's the screenshot. He just makes this little wink of like, yeah, man, I try. I don't know what you want from me. Anyway, so Price like chops it out of the bunker to 10 feet. And Billy's like, they're off the back of the green. I think Sevy's already in for par. And Billy's like starts like nudging Sevy, like, hey, give him the putt. You coughed in his backswing. Like, give him the putt here. And Sevy just like goes off on Billy. Like, no. I offered him a half in the fairway and like refused to give him the putt. Price did pour in the putt. And it's unclear if he really did offer him a half or just offer for him to replay that. He did offer for him to replay the shot. The audio doesn't catch him like offering a halve on the hole. But Sevy refused to give him the putt even after the fruitcake incident. That would just made me laugh so hard. And I just, again, in the full flow of that video of just like he's trying to get the rules official to help him. Hey, I tried. I'm sorry. Yeah, you got to play it out of the bunker now.
God, that's good. So I feel like some of these things, my next section is kind of basically called Sevy versus America, which I think helps, provide a little bit of context for some of the Ryder Cup stuff that we talked about. So Hale Irwin, I think, has a good quote from Hale kind of talking about Sevy. He said he was in a position to be like Arnold Palmer. He had the golf world right in the palm of his hand, but he didn't respond over here in a positive manner. Consequently, he missed this part of the world. Sevy had that charisma, that swashbuckling, hit and go for everything style that people love, but he turned a lot of people off because he did not relate to them or he demanded too much or whatever. Then that kind of kept his personality from being more accommodating. Maybe it was his background, where he came from, or the $100,000 appearance fees and jet airplanes always available to him whenever he played sort of bred some of that ill will. So part of this kind of started in the sense of in 1983, after he's kind of fighting with the European Tour about the appearance fee stuff, Sevy approaches the PGA Tour with sort of a special request. He says he would like special privileges under which he could enjoy exempt status in America while receiving unlimited freedom to play in Europe. So at the time, the PGA Tour stipulated that players were allowed releases to play in their home country, but they had to ask permission to play elsewhere. Since there were very few, if any, professional tournaments in Spain, Dean Beman changed the rules in Sevy's favor. So Dean Beman going out of his way to basically do Sevy a solid. He was
down for a lifelong friendship here.
Sure. He was granted leeway to play in Europe anytime he wanted, as long as he played 15 PGA Tour events. So he played the first year, he played 15 tournaments. It went really well. Won the Open Championship that same year. And he came home from the Open Championship that year to find a letter from the PGA Tour awaiting him. And he thought it was going to be a congratulatory note on his Open triumph. Instead, it was a letter telling him that he had been fined $500 for withdrawing from the Atlanta Classic the week after the U.S. Open. Sevy was, of course, furious. He said, I said at the start of the year that when I accepted my card that I would play, but on the Friday of the U.S. Open, I did not feel well, and I decided that I must take a rest. I informed the sponsor 6 days before the start of Atlanta that I would not be able to make it. He refused to pay the fine, but Beman eventually enforced it. I think they took it out of future earnings. So, in part, the following year, Sevy decided that he was only going to play 9 tournaments in 1985. And at the end of the year, when he decided to play in Wentworth, where there was 5 PGA Tour tournaments left, he could have met his obligation. He decided to play Wentworth instead. There was only 4 tournaments he could have played in the PGA Tour, and so his agreement was broken. Sevy said, look, America is a fantastic place, but I get homesick sitting in hotels with nothing to do but watch television, and I cannot perform well in tournaments. I feel more comfortable in Europe among my friends. So for the next 2 years, at least, I want to play 50% of my time here and share the remainder of my schedule between America and the rest of the world. He was basically like daring the PGA Tour to do something, which they decided that they would do. The policy board
and find out.
The policy board met and decided to ban Sevy from playing in any events in the 1986 season. He was allowed, however, to compete in the USF&G Classic because he was the defending champion. So like being a defending champion in this era was very, very important. Right. It was if you were the defending champion, you basically had to come back. There was no like, oh, I've won that tournament and I'm going to be fine. Dean Beman said he released a statement, said the board felt strongly that players should honor their commitments. Sevy will be welcome to rejoin the tour in 1987, subject to normal tournament regulations. Beman wasn't entirely innocent in this. I kind of took it a little bit personal, and man, did Sevy take it personal. Beman said it doesn't make a difference how many golf tournaments you win, how famous you become, how well you can play, or how much money you win. The measure of a man is when he gives his word, makes a commitment, and he honors it. He said the game of golf is built on a person honoring his commitment, on integrity. As far as I'm concerned, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player for 25 years before Sevy came along lived by a set of rules the players as a group put together collectively for the good of the tournament of professional golf. I don't find any excuse for Sevy. It may not have been convenient for him to honor his commitment, but he made that commitment. The condition was that he played in 15 events. The 15 events was Sevy's suggestion to the members. Sevy knew exactly what he was agreeing to, and he knew the penalty would be if he failed to honor his commitment. So Sevy basically said that he would encourage all European players to boycott the PGA. He basically kind of did the mobster thing where he sort of threatened someone without doing it. He said, we may do something that they don't like, but time will tell. He did go to New Orleans to defend his title, where he met with the press and then kind of pleaded ignorance. Said, I was never aware of the rules. The first thing I knew about being banned was when Mr. Beman wrote me last August. I thought I'd lose my actual membership, but to be able to go on it, to be banned was ridiculous. Bill Robertson, who was kind of a big voice in golf for Golf Illustrated, I don't think it exists anymore, but he kind of wrote a sort of I think a chiding editorial in golf. It's hard to sympathize with the predicament that Sevy is in. It's self-inflicted. He knew exactly what was required of him when he accepted his card. He also knew that he would not be able to honor his commitment, and yet, to our knowledge, he left it to the last minute to seek a compromise. The 15 rule may seem unfair, but if he truly believes that to be the case, the answer is simple. Don't play in America. No one is forcing Ballesteros to play on the U.S. Tour. Sevy accosted Bill Robertson the next time he saw him. He asked me why I wasn't on his side. I told him that he was in the wrong because he had broken his promise. And Sevy was pissed. It took him many years to forgive Bill Robertson for just laying out the facts. Here's an interesting quote that I found. In a practice round prior to the 86 Masters, Sevy was allowed to play in the majors. Obviously, the PGA Tour couldn't ban him from doing that. Sevy and Greg Norman played together. Remember, this is 86, so they're both in contention that year. And Greg Norman was asked what he thought of the ban. Greg said his ban in America is hard, but it's a rule. You can't expect to get off if you're booked for speeding. Oh, Greg, making some sense back in the day. So basically at every opportunity, every time Sevy would come to a major or every time the European press would ask him about it, he would light into Dean Beman. He just basically said, so 1 year,
he has kind of like Phil versus Monahan.
100%. I mean, imagine like in this era, like I think it would be fun to see TC taking Sevy's side, just seeing Dean Beman get detonated over and over again. Sevy said he has too many rules. There are new rules every week. It is easier to win the Masters than it is to follow all the PGA Tour's rules. Maybe he does something against me. It will make him happy. He said, Beman is a little man who wants to be big. Let's forget about him. He said, Dean Beman only cares about the U.S. Tour. A man who loves this game should care about an international tour. There will never be an international tour as long as Beman keeps his position. He said later, he was out for himself. He didn't care about the rules, the organizations. Oh, excuse me, this is Beman about Sevy. Said he was out for himself.
Look at Beeman's doing that voice now. Now we're into some serious territory.
So Beman told ESPN years later he was out for himself. He didn't care about the rules, the organization, or anybody else. You have to have rules for everybody. If you don't administer the rules impartially across the board, then you don't have rules. So they had a meeting to try to sort of, take the temperature down. Didn't really work. Didn't really get much sort of out of it. He basically said upholding it. And then, so that year, the Sevy was suspended. Dean Beman, who was a pretty good player, played on tour before he became the PGA Tour commissioner. He took an invitation to play in the Irish Open that year. And did this fucking piss off Sevy.
Let's go.
Said, I'm very angry about Dean Beman playing here. Sevy said, the man has done nothing for European golf, and he is here on a holiday. Beman said that he was one of several players who invited to play on this as a sponsor of the tournament, sponsor's exemption. He didn't come over here for a lark, just to wave my clubs in the air. I only accepted this invitation 1 month ago when I felt my game was good enough for me to do it justice. But Sevy just was ranting about this. He just was so pissed off about it. And someone asked him again later, like, what did you think about Dean Beman? Whatever. He says, why you ask me about Beman? You are trying to upset me. I do not want to talk about this man. I think of him when I go to sleep, and I am still thinking of him when I wake up. And this journalist, Bill Elliott, when he asked him about this, thought that Sevy was going to take a swing at him because he was so pissed. He said, Christ, he's going to hit me. And a security guard had to step in between them. And Sevy was so pissed. He said, Beman is, later again, he's asked again about it. Beman is taking a place that should be reserved for a player who needs the money. He should be here. And so Bill Elliott asked him or whatever, and he tells him, he gets furious. You are trying to upset me, asking me about Dean Beman. I do not want to talk about this man. Fuck you and fuck him. So later, Sevy kind of had like a soft heart too. He'd get really mad. He'd blow up at someone, then he'd come back. So he sees Bill Elliott the next day. He says, Bill, we must speak. And Sevy runs over to him and he says, please. I said, Bill says, I turned back and he grabbed me by both arms and moved me so close that only I could hear what he was saying. He says, I was sorry for what I said yesterday. I should not have spoken to you like that and acted as I did. But Beman, he upsets me, I was wrong and I am sorry. Foster says, he offered an embrace and I accepted. I mean, who wouldn't? I felt sorry for him, and so I said something about my wife speaking to me like that all the time. And Sevy's face grew very serious, and he moved in close and again. And he said, that is okay for your wife to speak to you like that, but not for me. Never for me. So another thing that Sevy was often pissed about with journalists is that, especially when he was on the scene, he hit it everywhere. He was so great at getting up and down from places that some of the American press kind of referred to him as lucky. They also kind of, I don't know if you have this in your stuff, but they often in teasing referred to him as Steve Ballesteros, which fucking pissed him off immensely. So the same journalist,
understandably,
for sure. I mean, it was kind of racist the way that they fucking were trying to kind of shit on him a little bit. And so Foster tells the story of seeing Sevy like during a round. They were literally in the U.S. Open round, and he was following Sevy along, and Sevy hit it into like a horribly plugged lie in the sand. And he looked up and he glared at Foster and he said, "Fucking lucky? Why do they call me fucking lucky? Shit!" And then he almost holed the bunker shot. And as he climbed out of the bunker, he looked over at Foster again and he said, "Yes, maybe I'm a bit good too. Yes, huh?"
Sheesh, man.
I didn't realize this, but Sevy actually was not particularly kind to Augusta. He won there twice. Probably should have won there, at least 3, maybe 4 times. But he was furious with Augusta when they changed some of after he first won his first Masters there. Apparently, they changed the course every year, and some of the sort of slopes were reduced so that the balls would be less likely, if you hit into like false fronts, run back all the way into the fairway, that they would get sort of hung up. They took he said 10% of the grade out of it, and he was furious about it, said that Augusta should be the same way. But I didn't know this. In 1987, he was in the playoff with Larry Mize and Greg Norman. It's kind of forgotten because he 3-putted the first hole. And so Mize goes on to make his sort of miracle chip, but a lot of people forget that Sevy was in that playoff. Sevy, he stormed up back, after he was in the playoff, he was crying as he walked up back towards the clubhouse because he was furious about the fact that a 3-putt would cost him, he felt that there should be like a 3 or 4 hole playoff. And the next week at the Seve Open, I think in France, I think that's how you pronounce it, said, "I didn't say anything to Augusta officials because it might have sounded like sour grapes, but I didn't want to take anything away from Larry Mize. But it is wrong to decide a major on 1 hole. I don't feel I deserve to be a loser just because of 1 3-putt. If you play 18 holes, there is more chance the real champion will win. Even playing 5 extra holes, as the British Open does, is much fairer." Sevy calling it the British Open, by the way. "I feel more disappointed than I lost last year after being 2 ahead with 4 to play. This time, I felt I am the Masters champion as much as Larry Mize because I tied him after 72 holes. I was in the best position to win when I birdied the 17th to be the outright leader. It is unusual for 2 people to catch you, which is why I did not play the final hole more aggressively." That same fucking week.
That's incredible.
The same week, he got into a fight with the European Tour because his brother was caddying for him in the Seve Open. And professionals were not allowed to be caddying. Remember, all 3 of his older brothers were professional golfers, although they're not very successful. And of course, they had not played in many years of this. They fined Sevy 50 euros for his brother and said that his brother could not play. He was, of course, furious, refused to pay the fine. It's a stupid rule, ridiculous. Why shouldn't he caddy for me? He is my teacher as well as my caddy, and he has been looking after my swing for many years, but he has never played on the tour. Jack Nicklaus Jr. caddied for his father at the Masters. Surely it is good image for the tour, not bad. I think Vincente's image is better than some caddies, yes? The fine doesn't worry me. Maybe the PGA needs money. Fine, I help them. It's tax deductible.
There's a little too much anger in your use of all these words, because he had this.
He did have kind of a way of
doing it.
Yeah. I will say this. I hope if you're listening to this and you're annoyed, Sevy was a smooth motherfucker. I mean, he was so kind of like he was super good looking. He could sort of like exactly what you're showing. He was charming. He could sort of give you like a wink and sort of like let you you couldn't quite tell how kind of like whether he was being serious some of the time or whether he was kind of giving the cheek a little bit. That same year, he got in sort of a pissing match with the owners of the St. Pierre Hotel and Country Club, which is where the Espen Grand Prix was held. This was before the Ryder Cup, and the greens were like super duper slow. And he was furious. And he said, "How can you prepare for the Ryder Cup when the greens are 95% slower than there will be at Muirfield Village? It is wrong. Times I say it, but nobody takes any notice. I complained to the referee, Tony Gray, at the players' dinner, and he said he agreed with me, but the greens stayed the same. He said the Americans beat us most of the time on the greens. We must play regularly on fast, firm greens, or we have little chance of retaining the cup. The surfaces were fast in Cannes and Madrid, but they could have been a chip so if they had the double cut, but the weather has been very good. There was too much grass, and the greens were inconsistent." So just like dude just like kind of got himself riled up by picking fights every sort of stop of the way. Apparently one of the deals was he would play regular matches against, his Ryder Cup teammates, whatever. And he would not pay up some of his wagers. This isn't necessarily a feud, but it's something that people were generally annoyed with. He played a practice round with Sandy Lyle prior to the Open Championship at Lytham in 1987. Again, he goes on to win this one. and he lost the practice round, but they were basically just betting lunch. And Ken Brown sort of recalled that Sevy often did. He would just kind of wander away. He enjoyed playing for money in practice, but when he lost, he would sometimes forget to pay. He would wander off to practice ground or lunch or the putting green, and you would stand there wondering when the money was going to be paid. Eventually, he'd pay up, but sometimes it was a few days later, and he would say, "Let's go double or nothing the next time we play." I think it was a little bit of a way of not letting you have your moment of glory. He hated to lose.
I could see that. That checks out with some of the stories we've heard. Speaking of wagering, No Laying Up is brought to you by FanDuel. Whether you're dialed in on every shot or just following along the action of the weekend, FanDuel keeps you locked into the PGA Tour action all week long because all customers get a profit boost every third and fourth round each week. You can use your boost on anything from closest to the pin to outright winners to top 20 and 30 bets and more. You can stack those bets and make a parlay. I put out a little pick usually on Sunday mornings, just kind of what I'm feeling, just based on pure gut. And you're welcome to tail those picks as well. They've been somewhat successful this year. I lost track of things, but I think I'm slightly in the green on that one. But if that's not enough, you can track your favorite golfers in the app with live leaderboards, player shot tracking, streaming coverage for 2 featured par 3 holes, and more if you can handle it. Head to FanDuel.com/NLU to step up to the tee and take a swing at betting the PGA Tour with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official betting operator of the PGA Tour. Must be 21 and older in present and select states, and 18 and older in D.C., Kentucky, Wyoming. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. All right, next up, Kev. I'm going to lay claim to this one because this is Ryder Cup related, and that's my territory. I think we had a little overlap on this one, but Sevy versus Miguel Angel Martin. So ahead of the 1997 Ryder Cup, Sevy is the captain. It's at Valderrama. There was some controversy on what golf course they were going to play. Sevy kept riding for at least one, maybe two of the courses that he had built to be the host, but Valderrama ended up winning out for a variety of reasons. It was a European, it had long supported the European Tour.
I have one note additionally on that. So Jaime Ortiz Patino was the billionaire owner who owned Valderrama. So one of Sevy's claims was that it was too exclusive to, sort of wealthy. Regular people couldn't play there. So there was all this discussion about, would Sevy back the bid? Would he wanted it one of his courses, whatever. And at one point, Sevy claimed that he'd been offered a bribe of $1 million if he would back the Valderrama bid. And Ryder Cup committee member David Huish was so angry that he was quoted as saying he wanted to punch Ballesteros in the face. As a result of
just a made up thing that he was offered a bribe.
Who knows? This Sevy claimed that he was offered a bribe to back the Valderrama bid, and the Ryder Cup committee member David Huish said it was a lie. He was so angry about it that he wanted to punch Sevy over this lie.
Wow, I did not get that one. So ahead of the 97 Ryder Cup, Miguel Angel Martin is having a hot start to the year, a couple wins. But then he loses his form, and it turns out he needs wrist surgery. So he's playing through an injury. The problem was that he had earned enough points to get a spot on the team. But Martin wrote to the European Tour in the beginning of August after his surgery that he will not be playing. He rules himself out. Sevy finds out, calls him, asks what happened, says, "I'm sorry if I had known." A lot of this comes from Bunkered, by the way. But it says, "Hey, sorry, if I had known, I would have made you vice captain." All friendly things. Good. Everyone's on good terms there. So this allows Jose Maria to get the 10th qualifying spot and allows Europe to select Jesper Parnevik and Nick Faldo to round out the team. So, and then at the end of August, just a month to go, Sevy is getting ready to announce the team. But before doing so, a European Tour official advises him to send a fax to Miguel Angel Martin to confirm that he can't play. Sevy said it was just a mere formality. But the fax was returned with a change of mind that he was ready to join the team, which was a complete surprise. So they are scrambling, what happened here? How does this happen? Are you healthy? And then following the BMW, which ended on August 31st, the tour requested that Martin undergo tests to prove his fitness, to prove that he was able to play on the team. So then there were some confusing faxes sent. There was a friendly one from Ken Schofield from the European Tour inviting Martin to join the official team delegation. Then almost immediately after, a threat to expel him from the team if he didn't present himself at Valderrama the next day to prove his health. And so that fax also said that the captain and the committee were considering excluding him. But Sevy was pissed about this because he was being quoted despite not being at that meeting. So like basically Schofield ever sent the fax with quotes from Sevy, but Sevy did not say these things, whatever. So then on September 3rd, Martin says, I'm going straight away to my lawyers. It's crazy, a very silly decision. I'm going to fight as hard as I can. They asked me to go to Valderrama, but if my doctor says I can't go, then I'm not going. It's basically saying that if I go and try to play now, it might mess with my recovery. But still, somehow he would have been okay to play just a few weeks later in the event.
I gotta say, like, I don't think Martin was like really working in the best interest of European Tour. Definitely should not have played in this.
I'm Team Sevy on this one 100% of the way. But some of these quotes that are coming are why I wanted to focus on it. But Martin said, Sevy, I don't think wants me in the team. I'm positive that, but I think I could be on the team still, and I want to try. Days later, in Switzerland, Sevy told reporters, Martin is trying to screw everyone. He is like a machine gun, shooting every way. He is a kamikaze going all the way for the ship. He has been badly advised. I thought he had more intelligence. He is trying to be a hero for the week, a hero for himself.
I think he said this multiple times because I have a version of this quote too. That this is from the biography. He said where Martin threatened to sue to stop, like, to keep a spot on the team. And he said, you think Martin can stop the Ryder Cup? That little man? You are crazy. Lawyers can only do so much. Martin is only thinking of himself. He is like a kamikaze pilot flying towards a ship. I thought Miguel was more intelligent than this. He must have a square head. He has had very bad advice. It's just too bad. He's making things worse and worse. You think he wasn't welcome before? What about now?
Yeah. Do you think he'd be welcome now? We would be out of our mind to change the decision. Even more scornful of the threat of the legal action. He tried to play an event leading up to it, but was clearly not right. And eventually some private deal was worked out. Like Martin got to come to the Ryder Cup and even appear in photos, but he left before the match even started. So basically, I don't know if he just wanted for his career resume to say he was a Ryder Cup member or whatnot, but something private was worked out, and that was kind of the end of that one. But man, kamikaze and machine gun was which I'll ride with Sevy on this one. Like I don't think Martin was necessarily had the team's best interest in mind on that one.
The one little snippet that I'll add to this is that Sevy's own brother Manuel, the president of the Spanish PGA, wrote a letter to Ken Schofield asking for the decision to be overturned. So he went against his own brother in the sense of like thinking that Miguel should be been kept on the team.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the guy was hurt. What are you trying to accomplish here? But what do you got next? Do you want to keep trading off?
Yeah. I think the rules official ones probably, I'm going to let you start on that one, but there was one snippet, it's 2 years later, they had a thing essentially called the Sevy Cup that they started to sort of honor Sevy's contributions to the European Tour. And Sevy, would play in it every year, and it was he was faded as a player at this point. But in the 2 years, for the first 2 years they played it, Sevy ended up beating Monty in singles in both of these times. They had these kind of like back and forth matches where Sevy rose to the occasion. He was ranked like 1,200 in the world at the time, and Monty was like a top 20 player, and he just flustered Monty with all the sort of usual tricks that he did. Sure. And they were held at Sunningdale, which shows you like, God, can we please go back to some of these like amazing like Heathland courses and have these kind of matches, whatever. But so this is Sergio has kind of come on the scene, and he's always kind of like been, like Sevy's my inspiration, Sevy's this, Sevy's that. And Sergio said he couldn't play on the 1999 team because he was sort of looking forward to something else, his conflict in his schedule. And Sevy, in a truly delicious twist of irony, accused Sergio of demanding an appearance fee. He said, Garcia is the only player so far who doesn't want to play. I'm a bit disappointed, and even more disappointed that he asked for appearance money. Garcia told me he was committed to play in the tournament in America the same week, but at the same time, his manager asked for appearance money. There is no appearance money for anyone at the Sevy Trophy. I don't think it is fair to ask. No fair to the other members of the team or to the Irish Tourist Board. This is the following years in Ireland. Sergio denied this totally. He was like, I don't know what he's talking about. Old man's crazy. But I just thought that was very funny that like Sevy was like, no, appearance fee is for me, but not for anyone else.
This was in 2002.
Okay, 2002.
That happened.
Yeah,
okay. that happened.
99 must have been when it started the Sevy Cup, and then so later 2002 came on.
I think so. But more Ballesteros quotes on that were, You think I need to give an explanation? Everything I said was 100% correct. If he wants to talk to me, I am very open, but I am the captain. He qualified for the tournament and he refused to play. So he is the one who's supposed to give an explanation, not the other way around. Like, I don't know if the Sevy Cup was that big of a priority for everyone, but
so
this one was.
Go ahead. Yeah,
this one was kind of more sad than anything else. This is his beef with John Paramore at the Italian Open, and so at this time, like there was some underlying things going on from the Big Four, I think, on the European Tour that had asked for an audit of the European Tour financials, and there was just some underlying tension going on with all that. And Sevy, rightly or wrongly, I think like somewhat correctly, like felt like the rules officials were out for him at this time in timing him, and he was timed. He got 2 bad times in a row at the Italian Open in 2003, and got a 1-shot penalty from John Paramore, but he refused to take it. He like refused it on the card, wrote it on the card, ended up being disqualified for it. And made some possibly misjudged comments concerning the mafia who have it in for him at the Italian Open. Sevy said, I did not take the penalty because I thought I was being abused by the authority of the referee. I have dignity, and I felt he was after me all the way. If I just smile about it, it's like pulling my pants down and saying to the referee, okay, let's go ahead. This is not something, this is not what someone with dignity has to do. I did speak up and say things I shouldn't. I regret that. So he gives all this really long quote of like, I've been thinking about this for many, many hours. And the more I see the situation, the more I see he had decided to penalize me one way or another. At the second hole, here we go. The Frenchman I was playing with, Gregory Hevray, has to go back to the second tee. So to make up time, I putt myself to gain time. Then the referee turns up at the 4th hole. On the 10th hole, I lose a ball. It takes 4 minutes to find it. And this is the only time the group behind have to wait. On the 12th hole, he says, I have one bad time. The first thing I say is, John, I disagree, but if you really want to penalize me, then go ahead. I was a bit angry then. I missed the green on 12. I missed the green on 13. I missed the green on 14. I missed the green on 15. On 17, I find my ball is cracked, so I pick it up and give to the caddy. The rule says very clearly that time starts counting from when a player is ready to play his shot, and you cannot be ready until your ball is ready. The rule is clear. The referee says, Sevy, you have another bad time. John, this is like a war. I say, so I start running down the fairway. This is a true story. And before I finish, the spectator puts his foot on my ball, so I lost another 3 or 4 minutes. If I was so slow, how come when we finished on 18, the match behind was still putting on 17? It was very clear his intention was to penalize me. He told me that I had been penalized a shot and then walked all the way inside with me to make sure I was penalized. Then I became very angry. I did not take the penalty. I'd rather be disqualified. So that's the true story. So,
it's a reminder in reading some of these things what a great kind of voice of integrity John Paramore, the European chief tour referee, was. Like, he stood up to Sevy when Sevy was, easily could have, he was a much bigger kind of global icon than John Paramore of all people. But John was like, no, the rules are super important. And I remember reading once, he said, when you are dealing with a player as knowledgeable of the rules as Seve Ballesteros, you have to make sure you get it right when asked why he took a long time to make a decision. Because Sevy loved to work the angles, man. Like, they got into it one year at the Volvo Masters about a burrowing animal situation when Sevy hit it up against a tree. He was, it was trailing by a stroke, he's tied with Bernard Longer for the lead. He needed to get in there to make a par to force a playoff, and Paramore did not give him relief, and he was, of course, furious. And then later they have the incident of the Italian Open. It's just like,
the fun detail on that relief thing is his ball is near this hole, but it's not. Like, it's not even in his way. Mm-hmm. But Paramore hones in on the definition of burrowing animal. Mm-hmm. And is it like a mole? Like, it can't just be an animal hole. It has to be an animal that would live in the hole. And he, at this point, Sevy, I think, is aware that all right, this guy's on to me that I'm bullshitting this rule. He's not going to let me have it. And Paramore reaches into the hole to see, all right, man, I'm going to check this out. Is this a burrowing animal, an actual hole? And as he reaches his hand in, Sevy goes, careful, he might bite.
That's so good. The mafia quote I remember hearing about, but I just ligging up, he threw IMG in there. He said that Schofield wouldn't speak to Jose Maria Lozabal anymore, that they were out to get, picking on him and Faldo and Langer. It was just he said, John, Paramore was, I'm going to show Sevy what we are capable of doing. and he kind of lost the room. Like a lot of people, because they, respected John so much and sort of felt like, to throw out like a conspiracy.
I've got 4 quotes from it.
Is crazy.
Bernard Longer said, "I don't know what action will be taken. The tour can't be seen to have incidents like this every week. Sevy has been and should continue to be an example for the young guys who all look up to him." Sam Torrance said, "For Sevy to think the tour is out to get him is beyond belief. No one is against him. He made the tour. He was our Arnold Palmer." Padraig Harrington stated, "All the players on the tour think of Sevy as a hero. He seems to be fighting a battle against himself. It's a pity. Any golfer would give his right arm for his career. He doesn't need to prove anything." Paul McGinley added, "It's disappointing to see dirty laundry washed in public. He's entitled to his opinion, but there should be a meeting behind closed doors. Slow play is getting more and more tedious. It is very rare for someone to be penalized, and it should happen more often."
So at the Madeira Island Open, he got sort of warned for slow play, and the tournament director Jose Maria Zamora basically said, it's a correct ruling. Like you need to pick it up, whatever. And later that year, he was so pissed. Sevy tried to fight Zamora in the clubhouse at the Spanish closed championship. And they basically they didn't say like threw punches, but some people had to like pull them apart. And that was again, another incident of like, dude, like you kind of lost the plot here. Like it's just,
it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable in a couple of these scenarios. I actually, Kev, have a image of that. If you'll allow me to flash it up on screen. Yeah, this is the image from the newspaper of Sevy like leaning in and yelling at Zamora. Well, like the worst, like one of the worst ones I think is, I don't know if you had this one as well, but the 1999 Spanish Open, and this comes from the Daily Mail with Derek Lawrenson. So he writes this. He says, "Rewind 3 weeks ago to the Spanish Open, where Sevy was the promoter. Jose Maria Olazabal just won the Masters, and Sergio Garcia was making his pro debut. A fiesta-filled occasion, in other words. Only trouble was Sevy could barely play by then, owing to his chronic back trouble. Even on Thursday, he was looking like he missed the cut. After losing a ball on the 12th hole, he trundled back and played a provisional. Television pictures showed that while a tree had clearly been impeding him on the original shot, now the way was clear." Cue uproar in the clubhouse. When the tour's chief referee gave Sevy the benefit of the doubt, saying his approximation of where the original shot had been played had fallen within the rules, the players went nuts. In the press room, a core of golf writers who had grown up idolizing Sevy didn't want to touch the story with a barge pole. On Saturday morning, it had still not been written, so the bloke working for the Sunday Telegraph at the time decided with the heaviest of hearts that it needed writing. He's referring to himself. Here's my second paragraph. Ballesteros was at the center of a storm of controversy yesterday when he was accused of something of which golfers should never be accused. While I don't think the time had reached 8 a.m. that Sunday before the sports desk started fielding complaints. One pro I had quoted said he'd already lost one of his sponsors. On and on it went. Not a word, though, from Sevy. That came 3 weeks later at the Benson and Hedges International at the Oxfordshire. Walking to lunch, I can still hear his words as he marched furiously across the lobby. Derek, I want a word with you." Fingers jabbing, eyes blazing, the almighty rollicking felt like it went on for hours. The pros who gathered for the show were struggling to stop laughing. Lunch was not great that day. And Derek goes on to detail, like Sevy didn't speak to him for 3 years, but then like an interview gets arranged in some way. And he was like, well, Sevy's not going to talk to me, but Sevy did. And they did an hour-long interview in the car. And Sevy ends the interview by saying, Derek, I forgive you for 3 years.
Forgive you.
He's like, I didn't apologize for this. I just reported what happened on this one. But that was the only one of like C word coming into mind of like players being seriously pissed about. A lot of it does fall under gamesmanship. Zinger called him the king of gamesmanship. And a lot of it falls under that. Like, you're just an asshole. You're not like breaking a rule here and you're just being difficult. But this one was one that was like, oh man, I don't see how you defend that one. You've made a career out of like pushing the rules to the limit. Like sometimes you're going to go over it.
Yeah. Sevy always believed that he knew the rules better than anyone, particularly like in match play stuff. In this lengthy Golf Digest My Shot interview, basically, he sort of claimed like, well, Americans don't know the rules. So like and especially in match play. So I'm going to, there was an incident with, I think you have it with the Marco Mira and his coin, where
Tom Lehman
and his coin, which I'll sort of defer to, whereas like, Sevy was right. Like Lehman was pissed, but Sevy was right.
Technically right, but also again very much an asshole. Like
for sure.
So they're playing a singles match. This is in 1995, and again Sevy's game is in not very good shape. and he's just like trying to throw everything he possibly can at Lehman, who was playing great, but he was only he was 2 down to get to the 12th hole. And he refers back in telling the story. He says when he was playing Wayne Levy at Kiowa in 91, on one hole, he's like, I'm going to go ahead and finish. And Sevy said, no, you cannot. And he wanted to know why. He's like, the rules do not allow that in match play. So he had to call a referee, told Wayne to mark because the opponent has complete control of your ball on the green. He didn't know that. Neither did Tom Lehman in this incident in 95. He says, don't get me wrong, Tom's a great guy and we're good friends, but he misunderstood me that day. He went ahead and tapped in. Like this sounds like it's a gimme, like a total gimme.
Like sitting on the edge,
like
essentially.
Yeah. And he went ahead and tapped in. So I imagine it's like, all right, Sevy didn't give him the putt, and Tom's just gonna be like, all right, well, fuck you. I'm just gonna tap it in. I'm not gonna let you get to me. But he says you can't do that, and because he wanted to use Tom's coin as a reference, and it was only inches from the hole. So I said to Tom, please mark the ball. Both caddies heard me. I said it twice very clearly, but he went ahead and tapped it in. I called the referee, and the people were starting to get upset. They didn't understand either. They were screaming at me. They didn't understand what was going on here. They were saying that Sevy is trying to put off Tom Lehman, but all I wanted was his coin on the green. Tom was becoming a little bit aggressive toward me. I told him I was not trying to do anything funny. All I wanted was for him to mark his ball. The referee understood very clearly, and Tom went back and put his coin down. Then he explained everything to the gallery, and nothing happened. And he says, you have had one or two other rules discussions during Ryder Cups. He says, yes, from my experience, I have to say that most of the incidents in the Ryder Cup stem from the Americans not knowing the rules. Not every player, but most of them. That is nearly always the beginning of any problems. What happened with the ball in Kiowa is because Paul Azinger and Chip Beck did not know the rules, neither of them. Which he's technically right on that part. But also, he's just totally trying to goad Lehman directly into getting his blood pressure up and spilling it. So,
well, so do you have any more little things you want? Because I think I have an anecdote that will sort of bring us full circle back to our last Golf Feuds pod.
I'll do my final dump, and these are just a few tiny ones. Some on the first green of a 4-ball match against Curtis Strange and Tom Kite in 1987. Sevy had an altercation with the Americans that illustrated both his sublime skills and his willingness to embrace confrontation. Strange was so confused by his opponents discussing which of them would actually play first. He actually asked, "Can you speak in Christian?"
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what they were doing. I don't know if they were just talking way too long before teeing off, but obviously getting under Curtis's leading to it. Don't let him pull anything on you.
I will say before you go, one of the things that didn't really fit in the Feuds thing, but when Sevy was playing in that first Open Championship in Royal Birkdale, when he and Johnny Miller were playing together, they were paired together the whole day. Sevy didn't speak English back then. And like, he was kind of wild all over, and he was like, he needed essentially like a birdie on 17 to assure that he'd be tied for second place, that he'd, get a second place check, whatever. And out of nowhere, Johnny Miller started speaking Spanish to him. And he was like, you're playing, you're a really good player, but you need to work really hard and make sure you come in here and make a 4 because you're going to be tied. Jack Nicklaus is coming, and I want to make sure you secure second place. And Sevy was like, he spoke Spanish the whole day. Like it was just slowly, which I thought was kind of awesome that Johnny Miller like
flipped it on him.
Yeah, just dropped it in that moment. Like, hey, like just chill. We want to make sure you get second place there.
I got 2 more final ones. This one was cringe a little bit. In 1997, Sevy was a European captain, of course, for the Ryder Cup in Valderrama. He met the American team plane when it landed. And when Brad Faxon walked off, who was going through a very public divorce at the time, Ballesteros said, "Where's your wife?" Asked him, "Where's your wife?" Faxon said he was convinced that Sevy knew about it and was trying to get in his head. Faxon said he apologized, but the damage was done. He'd put the dagger in. Oof. Yeah, that one's tough. And then last one, Sevy and Tom Watson had a little scuffle at the 1983 U.S. Open. Sevy had won the Masters this year. Do you know this one?
No.
Sevy was paired with Watson for the final round of the U.S. Open, and Sevy usually wore blue on Sundays, and Tom Watson wore blue on that final round. And Sevy didn't like that. That's it. That's the whole one.
Oh,
it just created beef where anywhere possible. But
Sevy shouldn't really have thrown stones in anyone's marriage, because Sevy actually married the daughter of one of the wealthiest businessmen, like bankers in all of Spain, and it was sort of like a cultural kind of tension all throughout their lives. And of course, Sevy like cheated on her like many, many times, and they eventually got divorced. And he told Peter Alice years later, in 2009, he said, I feel a little sad because I don't have anybody. I'm all by myself. That's the thing that worries me in the winter when it's dark and the weather is bad. But I do want to close with a sort of, we had such a fun time with our Brookline pod and how enraged the Europeans were. And all throughout that, we didn't have Sevy's perspective because he wasn't involved in that Ryder Cup team. It was the first Ryder Cup team that he had not been involved in many, many years. And so when he sat down with Golf Digest in 2000, they wanted to know his thoughts. I said, you've been involved with the Ryder Cup for nearly 20 years, but you weren't at Brookline last year. What was your impression of what went on at the country club? He says, I was in France. I didn't see much of it. They only show the highlights at midnight, but I have very good information from my brother, Boldemero. We were 4 points ahead, and that was misleading. In my opinion, we were only 1 point ahead going into the last day. Would you have not done what Mark James did, holding out Andrew Coulthard, Jarmo Sandlin, and John Van de Velde until signals? And he said, we had 3 Ryder Cup rookies who didn't play a week onto Sunday. It's hard to have confidence if you don't play when you haven't played much in America. So there was nothing there for them to think they had a chance to win any of those 3 matches. And one of them was playing Tiger Woods. I don't know. Those were Mark James's decisions. It's always easy to look back and say this should have been done differently. But my philosophy was always let everyone play at least one match before the singles. If you ask the players to play in the morning and the afternoon, by Sunday they are worn out. I know that because it happened to me. My record in singles was not good. He was actually 2-4-2 in singles. I didn't know that. For that simple reason, I had nearly played in all the matches. So Golf Digest says, what about the business on the 17th green? Sevy said, the business on the 17th green? And he said, yeah, after Justin Leonard hold his putt. Sevy said, I saw the headlines. The players forgot that Olazabal must putt. But I think that incident was not the cause of the defeat. They said, what would you have done had you been on the green? Sevy said, what can you do? Nothing. I'm not trying to excuse the Americans. I disapprove about what happened. But the same thing probably would have happened in Europe. It's the smoking gun, Solly. Sevy forgave people. The European press could not forgive it, but Sevy forgave what happened to the Americans. The same thing probably would have happened in Europe.
So it's really, if everybody else is feuding, then Sevy's going to play nice. Like, yes. All right. Yeah. All right. He's the contrarian. That's the TC way of feuding right there.
That's 100%.
If everybody else is going to be feuding, I'm going to play nice here. I'm going to flip it on. All right, that's all I got. If people have more incidents, please leave them in the comments on the YouTube page, and maybe we can dive back into this. I think there's a full Sevy, like I mentioned. There's many more Sevy pods to be done, but man, did that man enjoy confrontation, and I've really enjoyed learning a lot about it. And I feel like this is like the first real Sevy dive I've done, and it just makes you realize like how much there is there, and the effect that he had on people. And I just want to go watch highlights now, especially watching that match play final, and just check it out. That aesthetic is it's something truly aspirational. People dressed really, really well back then. And the British fans were so just doing British fan stuff of all the clapping and everything. It just golf was a proper sport. Now we're all trackmen and all that.
I think I'm going to bring some fruitcake to the NLU Club Championship this year. See if I can, All right. So good.
All right. This is fun. Thanks, Kev.
Hey, thanks, bud.
For FanDuel, must be 21 and older and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Thanks for listening.